ran up a check, I might do it again. Enemies close, had me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what, told you I'ma do me, why you hating on me, it's not adding up. I do roll like a Mack truck, country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold-hearted, now I'm back up. Keep it real, I do this once a month, I don't rap much. I just take the money and go stack up.
Good evening. What's up, Marie Jones?
Good evening. How's everyone doing this night on Ink to Ink? We have Mr. Julius Campbell, I myself, Marie, and Mr. Ray. How you doing, Julius?
I am excited. I am lovely. Why? Because we have another opportunity on a Friday night to educate our community with how fees and fines are impacting our brothers and sisters that are returning home. But before we even get into that, who are we and what do we do? Marie, tell our people a little bit about OAA Savannah.
We are OAA, Offenders Alumni Association, where we come to empower, encourage, and educate one another. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're educating you on fines and fees and how it affects you. It affects over 20 million people exactly. And I'll get into that a little later. But I'm going to allow Julius Campbell to come on and to tell you why recidivism and things do not work with people like me and Julius anymore. Go ahead.
For sure. And, first of all, what's up, Julius Hall and AB? We always want to give a shout out to our brothers because one has given us a platform and the other has given us the brainchild for bringing Ink to Ink to your listening. Ink to Ink simply means incarceration to incorporation. And we are talking about the success of men and women who are coming home. Marie used the word recidivism, and there is a negative connotation with that. So many people in that false narrative says that when we come home, we automatically go right back into the prison system. But that's not true, for we are successful organizationally, we are successful relationally, occupationally, educationally. I'm talking about we are successful in all atmospheres, if you will. And so that's why we come every Friday on Ink to Ink to provide a platform for returning citizens, relatives of returning citizens, and then those who have resources for returning citizens, because we believe that our stories matter. And what do we have in common? Well, Marie and myself, along with Julius and AB, we have also been incarcerated at one point in our lives. And because we are now out and doing well, we want to give other people an opportunity to do well themselves. So, Marie, if you would, tell us a little bit, introduce our guest for today.
Hi, that is Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray, can you pronounce your last name for me?
Yeah. My last name is pronounced Calfani. If anybody knows about like the men's clothing brand Alfani, it rhymes with that. I always say that to people. Make it easier for people to pronounce my name. So yes, Ray Calfani. I'm with Georgia Budget and Policy.
Well, Mr. Calfani, he's with Georgia Budget and Policy from Atlanta, and he's here to help educate us on fines and fees. And I just want to, Mr. Ray, before you start speaking, I wanted to, is it okay, Julius, that I read what I read to you about fines and fees, and then you can elaborate on that, Mr. Ray. It said, according to a report by the American Action Forum, nearly half of local government now receives more than 20% of their revenue through the imposition of fines and court costs. In 2010, 10 million people across the United States owe collectively $50 billion in fees and fines and charges to the criminal justice system. And the overall amount of criminal justice debt and the numbers of people affected are unknown. But the fines and fees, Justice Center estimate that court debt alone totals more than $27 billion. That is a lot of money. So can you elaborate on that, Mr. Ray?
And before you elaborate, Ray, tell the people who you are, what you do, and your organization.
Yes. Once again, I'm Ray Calfani. I'm an analyst. I'm a senior analyst with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. We're a statewide research and advocacy organization that tries to do everything we can to educate, inform, and support those support Georgians across a number of issues, workforce, but particularly with today's conversation around the criminal legal system. And I call it the criminal legal system, not the criminal justice system, because we don't have very much justice at all in the system that we operate under, or that we navigate under. So, and when we think about fines and fees and how they affect, not just those who, have to, are in debt to, our courts or other parts of our criminal legal system, we also think about the people who support them. Because a lot of times, it's not just about the person who may owe that debt. It's the person who, the person or people who support them to help them pay those debts. That's a mother, that's a sister, that's a daughter, that's a grandmother, father, uncle, brother, cousin, friend. There's a lot of people who, and particularly, in our community, it's so much that we have to do just to support each other and hold each other along in the process, because there's so many ways that our system just does not work for Black people. So we have to do so much just to hold each other together. And, and just being honest, that always being honest, but to say that oftentimes, these burdens fall on Black women. When we think about, whether it's, a woman who's incarcerated and, her mom, sister, aunt, niece, whoever, friend is supporting her while she's incarcerated. You think about commissary, you think about getting out, owing additional fines and fees, restitution, whatever, that could be another Black woman supporting her. And certainly, and right along with that, for Black men or Black boys, who get incarcerated, it is their mothers, aunts, grandmothers, cousins, friends, all of that who are supporting them. And often who are the ones who are paying those fines and fees to try to keep them, from being, incarcerated again, or just being deep, further entrenched into this criminal legal system through, just lengthening probation, having more fines and fees to get tacked on and stuff when you can't pay it at a certain time because you just don't have it. All those things. I don't want to go too deep, because I know we're just starting the conversation. We've got a lot to get into today. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, Marie. And happy to keep going, with all the other questions y'all have.
And Ray, guess what? I was just reading this too, also, Julius, and it says over 730 like the courts. It said over 700. You pronounce the word. Over 730 rely on the fines and fees for at least 10% of their revenue, enough to pay for the entire police force in some small communities. And analysts of the census data shows they concentrated in the South and Midwest towns, and these places often have weakened tax bases or barrier by the state laws from easily raising taxes. So they rely on us, or rely on the people who have to pay fines and fees. They can pay their police department. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, just to bring it even closer, Georgia's one of the worst, if not the worst state at this, right? So you talk about like municipal courts, these local courts, for cities, or towns or whatnot, who rely so heavily on a lot of times us, Black folks and brown folks too. They rely on us to be able to fund a good part of their government, whether it's paying for their police systems, paying for their court systems, paying for a lot of things that even don't have to do with law enforcement or the criminal legal system, but they rely on us to fund so much. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, if not everybody, who's listening and on this call who know about, Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, but beyond, the police killing of Michael Brown. I believe that was in 2014. The Department of that whole chaos and tragedy led to a U.S. Department of Justice investigation that found that Ferguson, Missouri, relied on 20% or more of, they relied on fines and fees that people had to pay, that all these type of debts they put on folks, traffic tickets, jaywalking tickets, all kind of stuff. But all of that, they relied on people to pay that to be able to fund at least 20% of their government. So why do I bring that up? I bring up Ferguson because of how ugly that situation is. And people think, okay, does that go on somewhere else? Absolutely. In Georgia's got at least 26 Fergusons.
Wow.
So you think about a bunch of these municipal courts, municipal governments that rely on a whole bunch of dollars that they're forcing on the people. A lot of stuff because this comes when a municipal government says, hey, we want to get at least 20% of our money to fund our government from fines and fees. That means you tell the police department to have a quota and say, hey, you need to go out and make this many traffic stops a day or this many traffic stops a month, get this much money a day, month, whatever, in order to generate the money we need for our municipal government. And municipal court, when people come through your court, you need to make it as fast as possible to get people in and out and paying that money. We don't need as much due process, right? To be able to have people, have a way to appeal this, understand how to appeal it, defend themselves in court, for whatever they have when it comes to a traffic ticket or some other type of ticket. They say, no, let's make this go as quickly as possible. Get an in and out. If they can't pay, you can put them on probation, right? That's a whole other thing. But to keep this money flowing into their government, right? So, there's at least 26 municipal governments. That means there's at least 26 cities or towns in Georgia that rely on they rely on fines and fees to pay at least 20% of their government operations. Some go up to like 70 or 80%. Wow. So imagine if 70 or 80% of your government, your local government, is funded by fines and fees. That you're getting from traffic tickets, you're getting from other types of what they call local ordinance violations. Like, hey, if you didn't cut your grass, at a certain, on a certain regular basis, jaywalking, a bunch of minor offenses. And it's not just those, it's all the stuff that gets tacked on after that. So if you can't pay it, okay, you got a late fee, you got a payment plan fee.
Yes.
You get on probation, right? Then you got a bunch of other fees that come from that. But there's so much that there's so many local governments that rely on this. And the last thing I'll say, go ahead, you got a question. Go ahead, please.
No, Ray, the last time you was here, the very first initial time you was here, we read an article on a lady because she was on probation about the water bill.
Yeah.
And that is, what does the water bill have to do with being on probation? And this was somewhere in Atlanta.
Yeah. So you have some courts that have had this practice, some local governments that have had this practice. I haven't seen any lately, but it does not mean they don't still exist.
Right.
But you have had some local governments that have said, okay, if somebody can't pay, if somebody can't afford to pay their fines and fees, you can cut off their water bill, right? Or you can tack that on to, their power bill. And if they, so if they can't do that, then you can cut off their utility, so they have another way of, trying to force people into paying, the fines and fees that they may get, if they get caught up in a traffic ticket or some other type of minor violation. There have been local governments that have tried to do that and use utility bills as a way to force people to say, hey, if you don't pay this, we can cut off your utility.
Let me say this, Ray, for those who just joined us. What's up, A.T. Miller, my boy, Black from Atlanta? How you doing, boy? What we're doing is we are not trying to scare anyone. We are simply educating our community to let them know what's going on. Now, Ray, I want to ask you a question because in everything we do, we want to be objective. So what about those people that are saying, well, wait a minute, fees and fines are given to those that have committed a crime, and that is their responsibility as a consequence to pay for their quote-unquote infractions. So what do you say to people that are saying those type of things?
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. So I want to make a distinction, right? Well, let me say this first. When somebody gets a ticket, right? Mm-hmm. Too often times, for the most part, they're just seeing, okay, how much do I owe, right? Do I owe $100, $150, $200, whatever. What do I owe? people don't, I mean, rightfully so, in a way, like people are not thinking about the breakdown of like what's in that $150 or $200 ticket. They just say, okay, I got to pay this much. So, all right, do I have it? Do I not? Right.
Right.
But if you were to break down like what's within that $150, how much ever it is, the ticket is, there are some fees that are in part of that ticket. And then there are some fines that are part of that ticket, and they add up to be, well, there's 150, 200, whatever they happen to be. They add up to a certain amount that a person owes.
Right.
So your point, Julie, is we think about, okay, well, when we think about being objective, if somebody is found to, violate a law or, violate, a local law or whatever, okay, there could be a penalty that comes with that. That penalty is known as the fine, right? That's one thing. Let's say, okay, we're not going to particularly, argue against a fine. If somebody, breaks, does something that's against the law or something that's some type of violation or whatever. Okay, they have to pay a penalty. But those fees that get tacked on to that fine, that is not part of paying a penalty. That's just part of funding government, right? Because a lot of times those fees have nothing to do with what type of violation was done. And a speeding ticket, right? You got a fine for speeding, right? You got a bunch of the fees that get tacked on to that fine that have a lot of times nothing to do with you speeding, right? So those are just simply to raise money to fund government. So that's that part, right? So we can make the argument and say, hey, okay, keep the fines, but let's get rid of these fees, because these fees don't have anything to do with your violation or whatever, right? And it's upon all of us, not just people who get tickets, to fund our government. Everybody should be, contributing to that. I mean, that's what our taxes are supposed to be, where everybody's supposed to chip in. I know that's another conversation, but everybody's supposed to chip in. You're not supposed to just rely on people who get tickets or have other type of violations to fund our government or fund a huge share of it. Everybody should be involved in that. The other thing I'll say is that when you have police quotas, right, who say, hey, we're going to go out and get this many tickets, we need to go out and make this much money, then it becomes a question of, all right, you're not going out you're looking for some type of,
Ray, hold on 1 second, Ray. I got to interrupt you because we're getting ready to pay some bills. So I want you to remember where you are as we get ready to go to this commercial. But just remember, these are important facts that we want to present to our community. Let's take it to a commercial. What's up? We're back. Myself, Julius Campbell, Marie Jones, and we got Brother Ray on, and we're talking about educating our community. How does fees and fines impact our returning citizens? Go ahead and take it away, Ray.
Yeah, I know as we left off, talking about, trying to be objective about this as far as, if people have a violation of a particular law or something like that, hey, why shouldn't they pay? And I'm not against the fact that, okay, if somebody has a violation, that if there's a penalty for that, okay, they have to accept a particular penalty. They have to accept responsibility for that. But that penalty, fines are meant to be penalties. Fees are just meant to make money, right? So when you tack on the fees to whatever fine you have, those fees a lot of times don't have anything to do with whatever offense that you have been, charged with or, found guilty of doing. So, and let's broaden this even further, because we'll talk about fines and fees. We talking about traffic tickets, we talking about other type of minor violations, but we're also talking about all the other type of fines for people who've been incarcerated. But even in Georgia, right? People get charged fees, commissary fees. These are fees, right? That people get charged for just, all right, you're charged a fee for just trying to have the basic necessities to live, right? And in Georgia, if you're incarcerated in Georgia, you're a lot of times forced to work when you're incarcerated. You get paid zero, nothing, right? Even other states, they don't really pay them anything either. It's so disrespectful, but they get nothing. So that's free labor, that's slavery, right? So you as an individual while you're incarcerated, you basically cannot afford to pay commissary fees. You can't afford it. Somebody who's supporting you from the outside is paying that, right? They did not commit a crime. They were not charged or convicted for anything, but yet they have to support you to pay commissary fees. So people are out. So I say that to say that, and whatever fines that come along with that as well, that can be as part of just being in incarceration. So we can say, yes, in being objective, it's not just about the fact, all of this revenue is being pulled from people. It's not just coming from people who are actually charged or convicted with something. There are people who are supporting them that have nothing to do with whatever they've been charged or convicted for, that are having to pay these fines and fees often. And this is
I remember when I was incarcerated, and Marie probably can attest to this. We had to pay $1 a month for having money on our books to go to commissary. So I'm attesting what you're saying and what you're saying. And I was like, "Are you serious?" $1 every month was coming out of my my money, just, they said, for administration fee. And so you're right, it was charging my family. So if all my family was giving me was $10 a month to survive, the state took $1, so I only had $9 a month, and they got that dollar faithfully.
Now just imagine how many dollars collectively out of all the prisons, that inmates that are incarcerated at this very moment, they're getting $1 from each inmate. That is a lot of money. That is a lot. Okay, so Ray, this is what I want to know, and I know that the people want to know. What do we do? Okay, we have to pay our fines. So how do we stop the fees? How would the fees ever be stopped?
Well, that's why we work. That's why I'm in the profession that I'm in. That's why, that's ultimately why we're here, and getting to that. So what I will say is, number one is that, me as a analyst, at a research and policy organization, I can throw numbers out all day long. I can throw data out all day long, but data by itself, it doesn't move politicians or lawmakers by itself.
Exactly.
Stories move them, because they need to see how.
Right.
Can we curse on here? All right, I won't curse.
Don't curse.
All right, I won't curse. But the reason I say that, because how effed up people's lives are behind fines and fees. You know the word I want to say, but that's just how powerful it is as far as how people's lives are being destroyed by fines and fees.
What do we do? Do you take people with you to the Capitol? Do you say, well, I got here go 20 people. They can talk to you personally and tell you how it affects them, because it is a different thing. Because like you said, I'm quite sure, I don't know if you've ever been incarcerated before, they be affected by this. The bookwork, the paperwork of this, right? But to be actually affected by it, so you can take people that has been affected, or people that are affected by fines and fees, and take them, say, listen, okay, allow me to bring 50. I can bring 100 people that are affected by fines and fees, and the people should be able to move them to say, okay, it's some things that needs to be changed, policies that needs to be changed, because that's where you come at with the paperwork. And look, I have this. These are testimonies. This is facts. These are not just something I'm bringing, presenting numbers. I'm just throwing out. These are facts people, you tell me to pay a fine and a fee, and I'm just getting out of prison. I don't have a job, can't get employed because I've been incarcerated. Now you tell me, I'm not talking to you, Ray. I'm talking to that politician up on Capitol Hill. You tell me what to do. Now you sit here behind this desk, sir, and you make the laws, but guess what? The laws needs to be changed because it affects me.
Right.
How do it
right.
affect? So go ahead, Ray.
Right. And these stories are powerful. And you know, for who I work for, where I work at Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, you know, obviously we speak directly to lawmakers and advocate to them, but and we can give them numbers all day, but we want to be able to tell these stories, you know, to lawmakers. And when I say we, I'm not saying myself. It's not my story to tell. It's, you know, for those who want to, who would like to, you know, tell their stories to lawmakers, or tell their stories to us, tell their stories to me about what they experience as a result of fines and fees. These are the type of things that move people to understand this is what happens when you create these, you know, these laws. This is what happens when you keep these laws on the books. What you think is, you know, what you may think is happening, or what you may think is some type of positive outcome from these laws you create, they're not positive outcomes. You just mentioned, Marie, about, you know, people having issues getting jobs, keeping jobs, finding jobs, searching for jobs, all of that, because fines and fees are so much of a barrier to that, along with just being formerly incarcerated. You know, so for those who've been formerly incarcerated, they have there you know, a lot of barriers there. But even for people who have not experienced incarceration, who've just experienced fines and fees, those are barriers to getting a job too, or keeping a job, barriers for searching for a job. And lawmakers need to understand, you think that you are somehow, you know, increasing public safety, or, you know, helping greater society by having all these fines and fees laws in place, or incarceration laws in place. You're not, right? You're making things even worse. You think you're fixing a problem, you're making the problem so much worse. Right?
Let me ask you a question, Ray. What is the temperature at the, well, not the White House, but at the Capitol, where you are lobbying or telling your stories? What's the temperature? Do you realize? What's up, Florence? I see Florence Parson is joining us, and she said, if the Lord needs somebody to go, I'll go. So I'm hoping that she's letting us know that if we need some help, that she'll ride with us. But Ray, what's the temperature on the Capitol? Are they listening? Is the pendulum shifting? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll talk about it like from on two fronts. Like on one end, you still have some lawmakers who believe that incarceration and more incarceration is the way, right? And, you know, placing you know, whether and fines and fees is also a way of deterring people from, you know, doing a particular thing, whether it's deterring people from speeding, deterring people from, you know, any type of minor infraction, or to something that's major. They think that these things are deterrents. But then there are other lawmakers that are open to the idea that, like, you know what, I know that, you know, the fines and fees, incarceration, that they're harming people, and they're also just harming just our greater, you know, just our broader, you know, state economy, all that stuff. So they're listening, right? I mean, obviously, you know, there's so much more that needs to be done. But if people are listening, if there's some who are listening, right, that opens the door to get other people to listen. And, you know, when they hear the stories of how, mass incarceration and fines and fees F up people's lives, right, and keep them from doing all the things that these lawmakers claim they want people to be able to do when they get out, then okay, this can begin to turn the tide for them and say, oh, okay, these laws that we're keeping on the books, they're not doing what we think, you know, they're not doing what we thought they were going to do. And I'm not saying that this is just an easy thing that happens overnight, but, you know, to change minds, right, you know, it takes, you know, a constant push on them to say, hey, no, this is how you're effing up people's lives. You effed up this person's life like this. This is how they can't get a job, how they can't keep a job because of all these experiences that they have, right? Yes, people get probation simply from not being able to pay something minor, and people, you know, they can get sent back into incarceration And it all can start simply from not being able to pay probation fees, right? And all the stuff there, right? Why are you putting an electronic monitoring device on somebody who got, who couldn't afford to pay a traffic ticket, right? Or couldn't afford some other minor violation? Why do they need that, right? Obviously, we know why they do it. They're doing it, as another way to generate money. There are electronic monitoring device fees that people pay, and these fees are for generating money. Fines are for penalizing somebody for, a violation. Fees are being done to generate money, no matter how it's being said. That's what the fees are there for. It's generating money, generating profit, whether it's for a private company that's involved with those electronic monitoring devices, or whether it's just other revenue that the government uses to fund itself, right?
Right.
But, So the stories of people who are involved in who are experiencing these just atrocities, these abuses. When you talk about fines and fees abuses, these stories are powerful. These are the type of things that change minds, that get people to reconsider. And and hitting these people with these stories so they can see that what they intend to try to do with these criminal legal system laws they put in place, that the outcomes are nothing close to what they may think that they are supposed to be. They are.
As a matter of fact, I was we was talking. I did a TED talk on how to help returning citizens succeed, and there were 4 staples that's necessary to help returning citizens to be successful in their reintegration process. 1 was family support. 2 is community support. 3 is gainful employment. And 4 is stable housing. And the reason those things are important is to help them to have a smooth transition back into society. Where when you tack on probation fees and fines, when you tack on classes that you have to pay for, when you tack on fees that I have to pay for as it relates to my driver license, getting that back, when you tack on all of these things, that makes it difficult. I was talking to one of my brothers that got out, that lives in Atlanta. He had to pay a $5,000 fine because it was continuing to go for his driver license to get them back. And the fees were tacked on while he was incarcerated. Every year, every month, as a matter of fact, they were tacking on fees until he took care of that. Then he had to pay for additional classes. And then I had another brother that had to pay for a leg monitor, had to pay for classes, and had to pay for probation and parole, and he had to pay child support. So I'm talking about all of these things were tacked on. How can we expect men and women to successfully transition into society if we are not assisting them, but we are hurting them? What do you think about that, Ray?
I mean, you just mentioned so many different barriers, obstacles, weights that people have to carry, and as they try to, to reintegrate back into society, as they try to, find, try to find meaning in life, after incarceration, trying to find peace after incarceration, trying to find stability after incarceration, and all those things that you mentioned. We're so much of that, it's just built on government uses that to be able to fund itself, when it should be, we should not be relying on just solely people who have been entangled in the criminal legal system to pay for the function of government. And so many of those things they're about paying for function of government, but also the fact that when people can't pay them, all the consequences that come that just can spiral you right back into incarceration, or can just you can lose your driver's license if you're not making child support payments. You can lose it if you're not paying other type of fines or fees, and you can you have your probation sentences extended. You can get sent back to incarceration if you're not taking care of that. And and all these things, these are court dates you have to make. These are probation officer meetings you have to make. There's so many things that one false move can set you back. Just one thing. Imagine let me stop. Let me pause myself. Y'all don't have to imagine. Y'all know what this is, and I'm on the outside. But living with that every day, knowing all it takes is one thing to pull you a step back. And so much of this is just about generating revenue for governments, right? There's got to be a better way, particularly when there's so much that's already being pumped into our prison system every single year. I mean, we're talking about millions, billions that are being pumped in. And there are other ways, there are other things that can be done to help people be in a space where they have economic stability, so they don't take a step back, or they don't even have that entanglement in the first place, right? But when we're not investing in ways to be able to prevent people from going on from falling into rabbit holes that are put in place for incarceration and everything else, and we're not putting investments into helping people who have been incarcerated to transition into a life where they find peace after incarceration, be having a stable life after incarceration. We're not investing in that. We're just perpetuating the situation and making it worse. And you cannot build enough prisons to be able to answer the issues that we have. There are other reasons that people are for so many ways falling into rabbit holes, in a sense, because I try to be careful in the way I say this, because there are so many things that put people in conditions that can lead to criminal legal system entanglement, right? Anybody's put in an effed up position, and I'll just speak on my own. Like, granted, have I been arrested before? Yes. Have I truly been incarcerated before? No. But I only bring that up to say, why did I do what I did when I got arrested? I was basically stealing because I saw my mom going through it. I saw her, struggling to pay bills. I was trying to help. I say that to say that there's so many people who feel in a space of desperation, right, that can drive them to a place where they may have some type of criminal legal system entanglement. And for that reason, so we're not addressing the things that you can drive people into those conditions, and we just make those things worse, and then just say, okay, we're just going to try to solve the problem by just punishing people and put them in jailing them, putting more fines and fees on them. We're just perpetuating the problem.
Oh man, thank you, Ray. Now, what we're getting ready to do, because we got to get ready to pay the bills one more time, and then we'll come back and we'll get ready to turn the corner on what we can do as a community, what we can do as a society, or what individuals can do to change these things. So just give us one moment, Ray. Get your collective thoughts together as we get ready to go to this commercial. Take it away. What up? Welcome back. It's Julius Campbell, Marie Jones, and we're here with Brother Ray. Ray, as we get ready to turn this corner, and Marie, you come in at any time, what I would like for you to do is two things. Number one, remind us again of who you are as it relates to your organization, GBPI. Let people know what it is that y'all do and your team, because I know you're not doing this alone. And then also tell us what we can do to help.
Yes. So once again, my name is Ray Calfani. I'm a senior analyst with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. The Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, we're a research and advocacy organization and we research and advocate on issues around the criminal legal system, the workforce, health issues, issues as far as education, and as well as taxes. So we analyze things around our budget, our state budget, and talk about what that means for everyday people. How can that impact everyday people? And I can certainly talk about that today as far as our criminal legal system budget in Georgia and how that affects people. I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but I can get into a little bit more with that too. But for us, we also strive to work with community, and that we're not looking to just have interactions and try to convince lawmakers on our own. It's the experiences that people have on the ground that shape the work that we do. We can throw numbers all over the place, but unless this relates to what people go through every day on the ground, it is not as powerful as it could be. So working with communities, where they share their stories, where we support them as they lead campaigns, lead movements to show how laws affect them every single day. We can put data behind that, around that, and support them to be able to have more power, in the legislature, in the Capitol, to make change. And that may not happen overnight, but it can happen, and we believe that it will happen. With us supporting, standing behind community. And we can provide the research and additional advocacy there to get lawmakers to understand, the impacts of what they do, the impacts of the decisions that they make.
Marie?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any more questions for Brother Ray?
No, sir, I don't have any more. He basically answered everything that I wanted him to answer, and he shared a lot of information. And I just want to say thank you for coming, Ray, to enlighten us about fines and fees, especially about like you said, the fine part is something that we supposed to pay. If you did something wrong, you should pay it back. But the fee part, I feel, can I say what I want to say, Julius? The fee part, I feel, is a ripoff. And in my opinion, it's a ripoff for them to get more money, and they don't, and people can't even afford to pay them the money. So I feel like this is what I feel. Let's not break the law so we wouldn't have to pay fines and fees and put money into their pockets.
That's right. That's right. That's my girl. Listen, Ray. So give us, as we get ready to conclude, Ray, I want you to talk to us. You have returning citizens. They may have did 10 days or 20 days or 10 years or 20 years, but they're home now. And they are trying to make it. I want you to talk to them and encourage them, but I also want you to talk to the community and let the community, and that is returning citizens, family members, the relatives, and those who have the resources. I want you to talk to them and kind of motivate and stir them with a word of encouragement as well before we conclude.
Sure. Well, for one, I mean, I would say that, for those who have been incarcerated or even are still incarcerated, like, your stories are powerful because, so many people do not understand what you go through. So many people don't understand, what those who support you can go through. And if you don't have support, I salute you for everything that you could be doing on your own to be able to push yourself forward every day and to find fuel to get to the next day. But your stories are powerful because there's so much that's not understood about what happens to people who are incarcerated, and in particular, like what happens as when they leave incarceration, what even brought them into a space where they could get incarcerated. So many people do not understand that, and we have so many lawmakers. I just think about like what's happened over the last year in the Capitol, who claim that they know that if we make harder incarceration laws, if we have more mandatory minimum sentences for people, that's going to do a certain positive thing. They have no idea, right? Mm-hmm. So people who have experienced that, who are willing to share, their stories with someone, whether it's with, the Offenders Alumni Association or another group that's doing incredible work like, the Offenders Alumni Association, your stories are powerful. And I also will say, that, and I say their stories are powerful because these are the type of things that create movements for change, because people do not understand what it is that folks who are incarcerated go through. They don't understand what they deal with after incarceration, and they don't understand what type of conditions people are put in that could even lead them to have a chance of being incarcerated. They don't understand it. And they don't understand, interactions. I mean, we see it so much. We still need to hear more stories about, understand how this affects people when they have interactions with police, right? Particularly negative interactions where, you have police who were doing a lot more than just simply they're doing a lot less than protecting and serving, right? Particularly when you have police who are policing for profit, right? Who are out, using quotas as a, let me make sure I say this in the right way. You have a number of police who feel like they don't have any decision making. They don't have discretion to be able to police communities because of quotas, right? Quotas tell them you have to do this, you have to do that. And if you go against the grain, it's going to be a problem for you, right? And that right there forces many police officers to say, okay, I've got to follow these quotas that are being placed on me, whether they're official quotas or unofficial, whether they're loud or silent quotas, whatever. And then that creates a system that perpetuates a system of policing that harms people. I'll go into the folks that support people who are incarcerated or who are formerly incarcerated. I salute you, right? I know one thing I do know is that supporting family members of friends who are incarcerated, who are formerly incarcerated, that is a heavy weight to carry. And I salute everybody who does it, because you are protecting the person or people, who are who have been, entangled in a system that so often is putting rabbit holes in place for people to be entangled, right? Yeah. There are conditions that are created that have people, more likely to fall into criminal legal system entanglement, and a system that wants people to be incarcerated. So, so they can profit from that and feel as if they're making, a right in society when there's just so many wrongs that are taking place in our criminal legal system. But I want to salute people who support those who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. The work you do, the sacrifice that you make, that changes lives, and that's protecting lives. So thank you so much for doing that. I know firsthand what that is like to support someone who has been incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, and that can make the difference between them, successfully making it out of incarceration and successfully staying away from being reincarcerated in the future. So thank you so much for the work and the sacrifice and the blood, sweat, and tears that you give to do that.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Listen, we're getting ready to get out of here. Marie, is there anything you want to say before I take us home?
No, thank you, Ray, for coming.
And I too thank you, Ray, for all that you're doing. Look, GBPI in Atlanta, if there's somebody that got a story, remember, Ray said it, your story matters. If there's someone out there that has a story about any of these things that we've spoken about, you can always contact myself or Marie Jones. And she's always on Facebook conversating, so you can reach out to her. But listen, man, we want to say shouts out to those that are listening. What's up, Joe Reese? I see you, boy. Listen, many of our brothers and sisters are getting out and they are doing well. And we want to continue to encourage them and those that are motivating them to do the best that they can do. I tell you what, I'm Julius Campbell. Again, I started out wrong, but look at us now. We are finishing strong. Thank you. Yeah. And we'll see you again next Friday on Ain't to Ain't. What up? What up? Ain't to Ain't. Good night.
Good night.
I like that.